And so, let me introduce George, if I can find his, there he is. George is an architect, retired from Ryerson University as the Director of Campus Planning and Construction. He has a deep interest in history, especially history and technology. In addition to his architecture degree from the University of Toronto, he has a master's in history of technology from Imperial College, the University of London. While studying in London, he developed an interest in the works of Isambard Kingdom Brunel, especially his railway and shipbuilding endeavors. In addition to delving into references on Brunel, I'm sorry. He commuted to university on the Great Western Railway line, which runs from London's Paddington Station to Bristol, known as Brunel's Pool Table, due to its avoidance of hills. In Bristol, while he lived nearby, the early restoration of Brunel's first iron ship, the Great Britain, was taking shape in the dry dock, where she was built more than 180 years ago. He learned to sail with the Moordale Sailing Club in Yellow Harbor. He has his Navy based at his summer cottage, on Bone Island in the Cogmachine area of southern Georgian Bay. The interest in technological history and industrial archaeology has led to extensive reading in those areas. His wife Anne is concerned that after 60 years of being together, she hasn't been able to curtail his book collecting. I understand that 100%. On the other hand, the collection means that he probably doesn't need to add to it to prepare his talks on subjects like the SS Great Eastern. Please give George a warm Shellback welcome.
Well, greetings, and thank you for inviting me, and thank Ron for sorting out the technical aspects of this, for which you've been exposed without your consent. Anyway, the Great Eastern is a steamship built in London, England, in the middle of the 19th century, and it was originally conceived as a ship capable of doing the Australian run, in that what they needed was a ship large enough to carry enough coal to go to at least Ceylon and back, possibly to Australia, because the coal reserves in Australia weren't available yet.
Can you just get a little quicker set?
Okay. And Brunel has been involved in shipbuilding twice previously. He had a friend who was capable of building it, and he devised a ship that was possible to accomplish this situation. The problem was it was 6 times the size of anything that had been built before. It is okay. It is to his great credit that he had enough civil engineering background and mechanical background and naval design background and people skills to get the people who could support him involved. He got a friend in Scott Russell, who had a shipbuilding concern in Millwall on the Thames in London, and had a yard big enough that this ship could be built. or almost big enough. It turns out he had to lease some land from neighbors to be able to launch it. Brunel started out as a foreman for his father's attempt to build a tunnel under the Thames at Greenwich. And at age 20, he was considered the foreman. The tunnel, amongst its initial problems, collapsed during construction, and it's a wonder that Isambard managed to escape. But within 5 years, he had won a competition to build a bridge across the Avon at Bristol, a 700-foot suspension bridge. This introduced him to affairs in Bristol, and so when the railway craze came along, he was able to become the engineer for the Great Western Railway, which has been referred to as Brunel's pool table because it has virtually no hills. All the hills are either skirted or bored through. So he became a tunnel engineer as well. The box tunnel near Bristol, near Bath, is about 2 miles long. And as an aside, I commuted on that line twice a week for an academic year, 100 minutes from Bath to London, 100 miles, for £5 return. Try that these days. Anyway, he then, before they finished the railway, they had decided the railway should be extended to New York, and to do that they needed a boat. And so he designed and had built the Great Western, which was launched in 1837, even though the railway wasn't completed until 1841. This was a success, and the success was followed by the building of the Great Britain. Great Britain was the first iron ship, the first screw-propelled major liner, and built and launched in 1843 in Bristol in a dry dock that was built to build her. The Great Britain is now being completely restored back in the original dry dock in which it was built. It was originally for the New York route, but it also worked the Australian route. And in 1881, it was converted to a sailing ship alone, and it was eventually retired in the Falklands, where it became a hulk for holding coal and other materials required for ships that stopped there. It was scuttled in 1937. It was raised in 1970, put on a barge, towed to Avonmouth, and hauled on her own bottom up the Avon and backed into the dry dock where she was built. So it is an amazing sight if you're ever in Bristol.
Is it being used today?
It's a historic artifact.
Okay.
It's in its dry dock. It's not floating. So here we have the outline of the ship that Brunel had developed. A almost 700-foot long iron ship, has both propeller, as you can see in the back. There's the clicker work as a,
There is, yeah, you got a little pointer.
anyway, you know which end the propeller's on. And you can see along the side are the paddle wheels, and you can see the circle of them on the section. So it had both methods of propulsion. You will also see that it has unprecedented length, which creates unprecedented problems. Although Brunel had come across these problems previously, they were greatly enlarged here. Ships always have problems keeping the sides apart, but in a ship of this size, keeping the ends from going up and down when it's in a trough or on the top of a wave means that the longitudinal ribs are as important or more important than the transverse ribs. So this ship had transverse and longitudinal made into watertight compartments, of which it had 19. And it is said that this ship would have survived the iceberg that sank the Titanic. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. The ship was built on the Isle of Dogs, and this is a contemporary view of the Isle of Dogs. I don't seem to be getting it. Anyway, this is where the ship was built. You'll see just south of that is Greenwich, the observatory. That's also the location where the tunnel, first tunnel under the Thames was built, which Brunel worked on. And the green line to the left of it, there's a gray circle, and that's the O2 dome where the 2012 Olympics were held in London. Also on the Isle of Dogs is now Canary Wharf, and so it's a major business center. But at that time, it was a shipping center. You can see the docks at the top, and then the Millwall dock, and then down at the bottom is the location of construction of the Great Eastern. The remains of the slipway, there is a portion of the slipway that is still there as a historic monument to the ship. The ship, of course, didn't enjoy the same fate as the Great Britain. It was cut up. The Greenwich Observatory is just off the bottom of this map, and we can see not progressing. Where should I be aiming at?
You don't have to aim it, but
Up and down. No, two. There's your point about that.
Okay, it's not just pointing at me, obviously.
Yeah.
I have a jinx just like this ship.
You can try it again and see if you get it. Nope.
Okay, so.
Okay, there you go.
So here we see how the ship was set up on its ramp. You'll see in this the double bottom, which is the reason that it managed to stay afloat and would have stayed afloat if it had run into the iceberg. The ship was to be launched, obviously down the slope, and you can see the dotted line under it, which is basically the chains that would haul the crib down to the water. The ship took about 5 years to build because they kept running out of money. They couldn't get enough money to complete her several times, and so they had to refinance it. Several companies were involved, but they eventually did succeed in getting it built. One of the problems in building it, though, is that the engines, the basic parts of the engines, were too heavy to be lifted into the ship after it was constructed. So they were put in on the during construction, which greatly added to the weight that had to be launched. They also, it was typical up to this point to build a boat in a dry dock, but there was no dry dock big enough to build this, and the cost of building the dry dock would have been out of all availability of the money. They thought about building it lengthwise, but because it has to slope into the water, they couldn't build it that way because the bow would be so high, there were no cranes that were high enough to build it. So it was determined to do it this way. So here you can see it as it approaches completion. It is far enough along that, see if I can get this. There, you can see that little protrusion. That was built for Brunel to superintend the launch of the ship. You can see the chains here. This is on the shore side of the ship, and those were built as brakes to hold it in case it started to slide away. You can see the paddle wheel structure here. It looks rather flimsy. It proved perfectly strong enough in service. It took, once they had decided to launch it, it took 3 months almost to get it from the stocks here into the water. They had announced when it would be launched, and there was great pomp and ceremony, and many important people came to watch. and they had to depend on high water, on spring tides, and so on. And the first day they just blew things apart. The rams that were pushing burst. The cables or the chains that were used to pull it were breaking. They had eventually worked more rams, more chains to barges in the river, and then eventually chains across to anchors on the far shore. They started on the 3rd of November. By the 28th of November, they'd moved it 14 feet. They got another 8 feet in November. They got another 14 feet in December, and 20 feet on the 11th and 12th of January. And finally, on the 20th of January, it floated free. It was interesting to note that as it approached the water, every night they had to fill it ballast water to make sure it didn't go while they weren't there to control it. Eventually, it was floated, and it did float, and it was taken to Deptford, which is very close by, where for fitting out. I'm still not getting any action out of it. Okay, so now here we see the ship as it was constructed. One of the interesting things about the engines is, remember this ship is 80 feet across and draws between 20 and 30 feet of water depending on whether she's laden or unladen. And you can see some of the coal bunkers there. It was determined that she had to be able to carry 20,000 tons of coal go to Australia. She didn't use that much on the North Atlantic run, but it shows these engines. I find it interesting. The engine, you see the crankshafts, and there are no joints where the crankshaft meets the piston. The cylinder acts as a pendulum, and so the cylinders go up and down. 2 cylinders, one double acting, but so the cylinders are waving as the crankshaft turns around. These paddles are robust when they're working, but they're very vulnerable when they're not running. In other words, when they're not pressing on the paddle, they are susceptible to damage. And this is one of the problems that they ran into very quickly. Its speed under paddle power was 8 knots. It had a propeller speed of 9 knots, and its maximum speed was 15 knots with both of them working. Then next we have a little talk about Isambard Kingdom Brunel himself. There he is during the launch. Those chains, links weigh about 60 pounds. He's known as the Little Giant. He was 5'4". added another 18 inches with the hat. And he was renowned for that hat because it usually was stuffed with memos and notes that he had to deal with during his day.
And his turned up shoes. Toes.
He's the son of Mark Isambard Brunel, who was a French citizen who had moved to the United States to pursue an engineering career. He had great ideas, but he couldn't sell them in the United States. He had a British wife, so they moved back to England, where he convinced the British Admiralty to build his automated block-making machines, which is one of the reasons that Britain was so successful in the Napoleonic Wars. They could outfit ships because they had the need for hundreds of thousands of blocks for all the ships that they had to build to defend themselves and work out the Napoleonic Wars and the War of 1812 and so on. So Mark Isambard Brunel's son was born in England and grew up as an engineer's apprentice. I don't think he ever had any formal education, but he was, you might say, a polymath, a naval architect, a civil engineer, a mechanical engineer. He designed and had built hospitals for Crimea that were prefabricated in England, erected in Crimea by an army of men, but no piece of them was too heavy for two men to lift. The whole hospital, including the air supplies and the beds and everything, was to his design. He also designed gunboat platforms for seagoing guns in the Crimea. And as I say, the tunnel engineer, he built bridges, suspension bridges, arch bridges. I became very acquainted with one of his bridges in Bath. It was a brick arch of the Great Western Railway on a skew across a relatively main highway that I traveled frequently. And then it turned out that it was considered an impediment to the traffic, and it was demolished while I was there, and a new bridge put in. The railway was out of operation for one day. They did it on a Sunday, and the Great Western from Bristol to London was only interrupted. They built a bridge beside it. They blew up the brick bridge, moved the new bridge in, and connected the rails. I thought that was almost as ingenious as Brunel himself. On the other hand, he was not considered a successful engineer. He was Robert Stephenson, his contemporary, was much more lauded in England than he was, and his father was considered the greatest engineer ever in France. He tried a number of experiments that didn't work, including what was called an atmospheric railway, where he had a railway that was propelled by air pressure. It was ahead of its time. I think Mr. Musk is trying to do something like that today, but he's not able to do it in one day.
A lot of people could take lessons from him.
So here we have the Great Eastern, shortly after it was launched. 6 masts and 5 funnels. The masts were named Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. People said, well, why isn't there a Sunday? And the quip was, there's no Sundays at sea. 5 funnels, they later reduced to 4 after it was in its later days. The foremast is pine from Oregon, but all the other masts are sheet metal used as funnels for the auxiliary engines that ran various lighter efforts throughout the ship. It was capable of sailing without propulsion, but it was found that too often, if they had the sails up while the boilers were running, the sparks from the boilers ignited the sails. Not a great idea. The interior was rather ornate. There's a skylight here. A friend of Dickens described this as Italian court sham. In the main salon, there was the funnels went through, covered, they were squared off and covered with mirrors, but behind the mirrors were also miles of pipe to extract heat from the funnels to preheat the water going into the boilers. And early on, before it was fully commissioned, somebody didn't open a stopcock at the bottom of these water jackets, and one of them exploded in the main salon. Fortunately, there weren't any people in the room at the time, but it caused great concern. The start of, or the continuation of the jinx, you might say. In 1861, it was going from Liverpool to New York. They'd hired a new captain. How would you like to be the captain on a 747 where you are introduced to the plane 3 days before takeoff, and the first time you actually get in the plane is the day before? Well, this is what the captain contended with. And 3 days out of Liverpool, it ran into a hurricane. One of the lifeboats was torn partly from its davits, which swung it into the side paddles, which severely damaged the side paddles. Then the boat was rocking so badly that the paddle wheel on the other side was shorn right off. And then the rudder broke, or at least what would be the tiller. The steering of this ship was accomplished by signals from the wheelhouse to the area under the, or just above the rudder, and you can see the dark circle at the top of this is the top of the rudder stock. It broke off above there, but you can see the capstans ahead, and those capstans were used to turn the rudder in emergencies. There is a cable, or a chain coil ahead of that, which had broken away. And so the rudder was fluttering side to side. It was moving 200 degrees and fouling the propeller. So there was great effort to try to tame the rudder since they had no paddle wheels left, and the rudder was possibly going to destroy the propeller as well. Fortunately, there was an engineer, Mr. Tolles from New York, aboard, who convinced the captain that he could arrange to steer the ship. And here's his arrangement. In order to get enough purchase on the top of the rudder stock, he had to wrap that chain many times around the rudder stock, attach it to the rudder stock and to itself until he got a big enough pulley that the capstans could actually turn the rudder. And they managed to get this jury rig fitted, and the ship turned around and sent back to Queenstown in Ireland, where it again had to hold to because the weather was too bad to get into the harbor. But eventually they did get back in and ended up unloading the passengers, and the luggage, which hadn't been tied down properly, was taken off in pails. There were a variety of mishaps in the Grand Salon because the furniture all went to the downside every time the ship rolled, and it rolled several times a minute. So it was not a happy affair. Later, on a subsequent voyage into New York, was off Montauk Point at the eastern end of Long Island. They were taking on a pilot, and they felt a shudder. And the pilot said, "Oh, that's East Rips Rock. It's not on the chart." It was later called the Great Eastern Rock, and it has been removed. I looked for it on the charts. It's no longer there. Anyway, it got a gash in the hull, and the hull, the outer hull, took on water, causing a list in the ship. So they knew there was a problem. When they got to New York, they had divers go down, and there was a gash in the bottom of the ship, 80 feet long and 4 feet wide. And then what to do? Well, a fellow named Renwick, an engineer, said he could have it fixed, and he devised this cofferdam, they call it, here, basically building a little boat underneath, and then exhausting the air out of it, bringing all the water out. So there was this thing was about 115 feet long and 15 feet wide and 8 feet deep. And they managed to get it fixed, but they couldn't stop it from leaking because their waterproofing against the hull was pieces of carpet. So it was devised by Renwick that they would put in 3-inch water hose, and then when it was tight against the ship, they would pressurize the hose, and that held. And so they were able to rebuild this gash. Renwick said it would take 2 weeks. It, in fact, took 2 months, but since the captain would have had at least a month to get approval, if he'd asked approval in London, he went ahead with this. And the ship did sail back to Liverpool with this patch, but it was beached on the Mersey on the other side from Liverpool, where they were able to do final repairs. But they, to do that, they beached her, but then they had to build tunnels under her to reach the affected areas, and they found 10 other cracks in the hull that they had to patch while they were there. Another jinx. Then it was getting to the point where everybody was exasperated with it, and it was determined that the use for the ship would be as a cable layer to lay the transatlantic cable. So they set out to do that. It's also interesting to note that while the ship was being built, speculators were building the cable in London very close to the ship, but it was only when it was taken out of passenger service were they able to use it as a cable layer, because it was the only ship available that could carry 3,000 miles of cable. It was loaded into the ship in water-filled tanks. The tanks themselves, before the water and cable were put in, weighed 2,000 tons.
Wow.
And you can see in this, at the bow, you can see what looks like a pulley, and at the stern, there's the equipment there. The cable is paid out over the stern, but it is just as important to be able to pick up the cable, as we'll see. They started out from Valencia in Ireland and laid 1,200 miles of cable, some of it 2.5 miles deep in the Atlantic, with various mishaps. The cable broke. It was also interesting to me that they were in contact with the shore in Valencia through the cable to test the veracity of the cable as they went along. When there was a problem, they had to turn around and raise the cable to find the problem. There were several instances where they found what they thought could only have been sabotage, wires pushed through the cable while it was in its tanks. Anyway, about 600 miles off Newfoundland, they finally had a break that they could not fix. They grappled and got the cable, but their lifting gear wasn't strong enough to lift the cable, which was, there was 2.5 miles of cable on each side of the grapple. So they gave up and went back to England, started the next year from Valencia again with a new cable. They were able to splice the cables, and when there was a problem, pick up the cables and resplice them, fix them, and so on. So it was quite an operation. But on July 27th, 1866, 73 years before I was born on the same day, this ship brought the cable ashore in Heart's Content in Newfoundland. I thought, looking at the map of Newfoundland, you see Heart's Content isn't the first place you come to in Newfoundland, but obviously it was a place that they had prepared for transmitting the signals on from there. They weren't particularly worried about getting the signal to St. John's. They were worried about getting it to New York. And other cables had already been laid to accomplish that. Then the ship languished. It laid other cables. There were cables, several cables in the Indian Ocean that they laid, for instance, from Mumbai to Aden. But soon there were cable-laying ships that made this operation obsolete, and so the ship was auctioned off at Liverpool, and apparently Lewis's stores bought it for something like £16,000 and used it as a dance hall and nightclub, and on market days it ran up and down the Mersey with these signs on it to indicate the sales at the store. Even though it was ignominious and many people considered Brunel a failure, in April of 1855, he wrote in one of his volumes of notebooks, "The most useful and valuable experience is that derived from failure and not from success." Just as an aside, one of the people asked for comments when she was about to be towed out of Deptford for her fitting out and sailing. Someone was asked what would be the best use for her, and this fellow Lindsay said, "Well, if it was me, I'd take her to Brighton, I'd dig a big hole and I'd put the stern in it and use her as a promenade, hotel, and saltwater bath. That's the only way she'll ever make any money." So that's the end of the jinxed Great Eastern. Thank you.
Did that actually happen?
I have a question. There's a story that when they were dismantling it, they discovered a skeleton between the two hulls. Is that true or not?
Well, it's referred to in the books several times. I don't think it's been unquestionably authenticated. Every time they thought there was someone tapping between the hulls, somebody was able to find the loose shackle that was banging somewhere. But it persists.
Are there any other comments or questions?
You know that tunnel you're talking about, the granite, was that the pedestrian tunnel?
Pedestrian tunnel.
Have you ever walked out? Yes.
Yes. Well, it collapsed several times during construction, and although Isambard Kingdom Brunel was the foreman during construction, it wasn't completed while he was still alive. Also, Brunel never lived to see this ship actually sailing. He died during the fitting out. He was not in good health, and he died at age 53 while the ship was being fitted out on the south coast of England.
Thank you.
Who was the ship owned by? Was it?
Oh, the Great Eastern Company, Australian mail company that Daniel Gooch, who was one of Brunel's greatest companion and engineer, who actually ran the Great Western Railway for Brunel, said, now where was I? The question was,
Who owned it?
Gooch arranged several times to refinance it. That they would name the company and it would start off again. There was a fellow named Fields who bought it to do the cable laying. And there were several times it was sold at auction for a lot less than, I think this ship cost £2 million to build back in the day. Probably several times what the estimate was, if there ever was a preliminary estimate.
Things stay the same.
Yeah.
It was launched sideways, as I understand.
Yeah.
Are there a lot of ships that are launched sideways?
Yeah, lots of big stuff.
Yes. But one of the problems launching sideways is that you're on the stalks, and as you push it, if you don't get it into the water and it sits, you're not sitting on the bearing that was meant to hold it while it was being built, and you can create a valley and then you've got to push it up over the edge of that valley to get it into the water. But it was the only way they could have done it. Yes?
Did they build many other ships with both paddle wheels and propellers in those days? Or was that the only one?
Probably. I'm not familiar with other ships, but it's not uncommon back in that day. The advantage, you see, back then was that propellers were rudimentary. They basically were slanted flat slabs, and the maneuverability of a ship was questionable under propeller and rudder by itself, and so the paddle wheels made it much more maneuverable because you could have the paddles going opposite directions, as well as going astern with the propeller. You could shut down the propeller and back up with the paddle wheels, maneuvering by their speed, like a Caterpillar tractor. So.
Amazing. Any other comments in George Daniel? George, a wee token of our appreciation.
Thank you.
Let's just give him a little fascinating to say.
It's just amazing what they could do out there.
Yes.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes. So, coming up, next week, Wayne Parker will be in person and on Zoom, and he's going to be talking about the PERF handicap, it's a performance handicap racing fleet system. Just why do we give folks handicaps when they go into racing, and where and how is this used in North America? So that's coming up, and then the following week, I have misplaced copy. Yeah, there's too and I don't. So I don't remember what's on the following week. I'm sorry. So with that, we'll have Pike's Out.